All right, today we're tackling a really important legal question for anyone in the beauty industry or a client in Kentucky. Can you legally perform electrolysis with a standard aesthetics license? You might think you know the answer, but the reality is pretty specific. So, whether you're an esthetician thinking about expanding your services or you're a client who wants permanent hair removal, this is a question that pops up all the time. There's a ton of confusion out there, so let's clear it up once and for all. Okay, let's not bury the lead here. The bottom line answer, based on current Kentucky law, is a hard no. An esthetician cannot legally perform electrolysis under their standard license. It's not a maybe, it's a definite no. So now let's get into the why. To really get why the law is so strict, you first have to understand what the procedure actually is. What makes electrolysis so different from something like waxing or tweezing in the eyes of the state? So check out the technical definition here. We're talking about inserting a sterile probe into the hair follicle and using an electrical current to destroy the growth center. The two words to focus on there are insert and destroy. This is way more involved than just a surface-level treatment. Right, so the law hones in on a few key things. First, electrolysis is considered invasive. Why? Because it penetrates the skin and destroys internal tissue. And get this, it's the only method of hair removal that the FDA actually recognizes as permanent. That word alone tells you how intense the procedure is and why it's regulated so differently. Okay, so knowing that electrolysis is considered invasive, let's connect the dots to Kentucky-specific rules for estheticians. The state draws a very, very clear line in the sand about what's allowed and what's not. Take a look. On the left, you've got everything estheticians are licensed to do. Facials, waxing, makeup, things that generally happen on the surface. But that column on the right, that's the key. Prohibited procedures include anything that pierces the skin or destroys tissue. See where this is going? Electrolysis literally checks every single one of those boxes. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This isn't some fuzzy interpretation. It's written right into the state's own rulebook. This regulation makes it crystal clear. Any device that pierces or penetrates the skin is explicitly forbidden for someone with an aesthetics license. Period. So this creates a really strange situation in the state. The source material calls it a regulatory gray area, or a licensing gap, and it has some pretty big real-world consequences for professionals who want to offer the service and for clients who are trying to find it. Which, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question you're probably asking right now. If a licensed esthetician is prohibited from doing this, then who in Kentucky is legally allowed to perform electrolysis? Okay, let's just walk through the logic here, step by step. 1. Unlike a lot of other states, Kentucky doesn't even have a separate license for electrologists. 2. We've already established that the esthetician license says no way to breaking the skin. So what's left? The only logical conclusion is number 3, electrology gets kicked over into the medical field, meaning it requires a medical license or direct supervision from a physician. Now, look, while we're breaking down the current legal landscape, rules and regulations can always change. So if you need the absolute, final, no-kidding official word for your own situation, where should you turn? The source material is adamant about this, and it's fantastic advice. The one and only place to get a definitive, legally binding answer is from the state board itself, the Kentucky Board of Hairdressers and Cosmetologists. They're the ones who make the rules, so they're the ones to ask. And to make it super easy for you, here is their direct email. Seriously, if you have any doubt at all, just shoot a message to kbc@ky.gov. Get the answer straight from the source. All right, to wrap things up, let's pull the camera back a bit and see how Kentucky's unique situation fits into the bigger picture across the United States. And this is where you can really see how much of an outlier Kentucky is. So many other states have created a clear legal path for this. They have a dedicated electrologist license that often requires more than 600 hours of specialized training. This really shines a spotlight on what the source calls Kentucky's regulatory gap. It leaves consumers with fewer vetted options and puts professionals in a really tough spot. And that brings us to our final thought. As you see the rest of the country evolving and creating these safe, legal pathways for electrolysis, it leaves us with a pretty big question. Is it time for Kentucky to revisit its own regulations and close this gap for professionals and consumers alike? Something to think about. Thanks for watching.